Hey people, what's good? Mount Let the Hail Fire. Quick one today, hopefully, and it's unscripted, so let's see if it's actually quick. I have a full bullet points to go over instead of a fully fleshed out script. I won't make it out to the range for a few weeks solo, but I didn't want to keep too many videos to the wayside, and I've been wanting to do a longer version of this video. Today I wanted to cover Surefire suppressor selections, mostly focusing on 5.56, but some 7.62 will be in here as well. In front of me, I have all the RC2 and RC3 cans I currently own, as well as the B&T SRBS 7.62, which comes with its own Surefire Rotex collar that is hub compatible. B&T sells the collars separately themselves for I think 371 bucks, maybe 271. I'll flash a picture up in post. So you could use your hub cans like a Resilient Putnik or other B&Ts or anything else that is hub compatible on a Surefire gun. So the points I wanted to cover today are as follows. I'll timestamp them as usual, of course. So first off, why Surefire and why not Surefire? The old school and new school selection criteria for the one can to rule them all sort of thing. The different types of Surefire devices, RC2s, RC3, 7.62, the SPS versus the RC2s. Addressing the RC3 a bit, as well as mounting solutions and just some kind of closing thoughts about what I use the cans for. So starting from right to left, my right to left, I don't know, this is the SOCOM 5.56 SB2 or small barrel. So pretty much it's a SOCOM 5.56 RC2, which is this one with a slightly bigger bore diameter, a couple thou bigger, meant for 10.5 and below or 11.5 and below. But for when you're shooting like in optimal twist rates, like really, really fast twists with really, really light bullets, you're shooting like 35 grain, 40 grain Spitzers, or you're just firing bulk crap ammo through really short barrels with, questionable twist rates and questionable manufacturing, that extra bore could kind of help you with any bullet deflection. And, maybe you have a bad shoulder, maybe the suppressor rod's not totally square. That's what you would get the SB2 for. And also the SB2, since it's slightly overboard, not as overboard as, say, the RC2 7.62, which it isn't, right? Don't shoot 30 cal out of this. This does offer a little bit better back pressure. So maybe if you didn't want to splurge on an RC3 at full retail, which you shouldn't, and again, I'll get to that later, the SB2 is probably the best kind of do-it-all can for just 5.56, especially if you have SBRs. Like I mentioned, this is the SOCOM 5.56 RC2, or the DE, the, SOCOM issued one. This is the Surefire 5.56 RC3, the flow-through can. This is a Surefire SOCOM 300SPS. This is meant for 300 blackout, but it's a general 30 cal can. You could shoot other 30 cals, even magnums out of this. And it has slightly better back pressure reduction. It's more heavily focused, not on flash suppression and total signature reduction, but on decibel reduction. So this is one of the better sounding 30 cal cans that Surefire offers, and one of the better sounding 30 cal cans out there, honestly. This is the Surefire SOCOM 7.62 RC2, right? So just this RC2's big brother in 7.62. This isn't the SCAR suppressor. The SCAR suppressor is actually a little bit different than this one. I forget what they call it. I think it's like the SS762 or something like that. And then this is a B&T SRBS 7.62. This is the full length Inconel one, not titanium. And I only have it out here because it is compatible with this Rotex Surefire collar, which I'll get a bit into. I'm not a total fan of this, but if you wanted to use a hub device with a Surefire. So first off, why Surefire? Me in the past, in other videos, I've talked about Surefire and Knight's Armament. And while they don't innovate as quickly as other companies, when they do, it's usually important, but also they get the largest amount of feedback from anybody because of all the various special missions units, special forces, special operating forces, partner forces within NATO with their own soft and smooth components, even conventional military, federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, state level agencies, not to mention us civilians in the U.S. market. And then I'm not sure if other civilians outside of the U.S. market get them, but the feedback loop is usually pretty huge, and it does make it back into the product, and the results do speak for themselves. I mean, there are cans out there that have been recored with the same outer shell, I think over 1 million rounds. There's examples out there, old pre-RC1 models like the SOCOM 5.56 ER, whatever it was called, RC1s as well as RC2s with 500,000 rounds on them. And suppressors, at the end of the day, these are durable but disposable items, right? Like, they're not supposed to last forever. This isn't some lifetime investment you're making. Now, for most people, it will be a lifetime if it's a good quality can like a Surefire. They will last you, even if it only makes it to 250,000 rounds. I mean, the average American, I think, fires maybe 500 rounds a year. And sometimes that's even just in one range session where they're just blasting paper at like 25 meters and then that's it. And even if you are going to a lot of schools and shooting a lot of competitions, you know, how many rounds are you really shooting a year when you factor all the other family obligations and things that you have to do and the cost for it, especially now, given, you know, the regulatory and inflationary environment we're in. Even if you're doing 20,000 rounds a year, that's still at the bare minimum 10 years of service for the can, if not more. And it does have a decent amount of mounting options. I mean, it's not like it's too hard to find Surefire devices, but a lot of the mounts have been retired. They used to have different like European metric and Soviet style, like 14, 24 millimeter mounts, and a couple others that they have retired, which, you know, kind of sucks, but you could still find them. And in my opinion, they still have the best value to cost ratio for the total package. I'm talking, you know, in comparison to relative weight, to relative signature reduction, the heat, the sound, long-term durability, the lower back pressure, flash suppression, right? But also bear in mind who the intended audience was. Not us, right? Not us civs. It was for folks that were in the military. And they're also almost always available. Maybe not so much now, but hardly any cans are super available now. But Surefire makes a lot of them. You could almost always find at least a Surefire can, maybe not the one you want, maybe not a mini, but you could always find a Surefire can out there. And then there's also secondhand market availability, which, you know, buying suppressor secondhand, I get it. Not a lot of people want to get into it, but I would call Capital Armory and have them facilitate it for you. They have a great warranty as well. I mean, you could send these things after, you know, shooting the crap out of them, melting them partially with a full auto, and they'll chop and recore it for you because they are depot serviceable. You can see even here on the RC3 that there is a weld band where they could just pop this core off, pop the top off, put a new core in, because this outer container is the serialized part and not the whole suppressor like the B&T. This is all a one-piece 3D printed, so if I damage this, I have to get a whole new can, new Form 4, and everything. They can't really repair it. There's no way to repair them. Now, there are Wildcat options too. I don't know if they'll be supporting them longer term. A lot of them are, you know, recently as like 2016, 2018, 2019 introduced, but they have like the old 260 cans, which they rebranded as the 6.5 Creedmoor dedicated can. They have the 338 series for like 338 Lapua and Norma mags. And you could even use like big belted magnums, you know, like 7mm, 8mm, and a couple, or maybe not 8mm, but you can use things that are compatible with a 30 cal can in them, even if they're big giant magnums in just their regular non-magnum sizes. And they are starting to innovate a bit more with the RC3, which I know isn't like a slam dunk compared to a Hux, compared to an SRBS, compared to a couple other flow-through cans, but we'll get on the RC3 a bit more later. And like I mentioned, they're depot serviceable, right? You just cut the top off. As long as you don't like full auto melt this thing down and put a pinhole through the outer canister, and even then they could probably weld around it depending on the damage. But I mean, look, I was issued these, or, you know, got them in the military, however you want to say that. And I've seen these things absolutely beat the crap. I've beat them the crap. You could see here, I've beat a couple of these to crap, the RC2 and the RC3 already, and a little bit on the RC2 762. I haven't fired this one, or this one yet. And now, why not a Surefire? Well, first off, if you don't have a Surefire mount, or any Surefire mounts, and if you're not a cloner, right, you're not going to make a Block 1, a Block 2, a URGI, or anything else like that, then don't even bother. There are better options out there, right? Hux and B&T have better flow-through as well as CAC, but that's more expensive. There's dedicated AK options, right? Like the Dead Air, Wolfman PBS1, the Resilient Putnik, which I think is just a great can overall as well, that's hub compatible. And then you also have better mounting options out there, right? Hub is kind of like the king of the hill right now, but then you have Rearden and you have ASRs and other of those I think wedge mounts or whatever they're called, right? Now, if you're a data guy, you know, what Pew Science has able to capture, and look, I don't want to beat up on Pew Science. They're able to capture a lot of data and a lot of empirical evidence, and they have their own rating. as a data guy in real life, you know, messing with big data systems and analytics and building my own ML models and deep neural networks and working with it, especially in the security industry, I have some opinions about kind of like these rough normalized scores, you know, that you would see in something even like ESPS or CVSS. And if you know what that is, comment down below. I love you. Well, kind of, right? But I'm not a huge fan of normalization. But look, I'm not trying to say it's bad. For what they have and what we have to compare it to, there's really no better out there. But if you do take it for what it's worth, just kind of on a face value compared to everything, the Surefires consistently score a lot lower than other newer options, which, you know, is another con against Surefire, that they, again, are not for us. And I'm not saying that to their defense. I'm saying that they don't innovate as quick. They're tied up in government contracts. They don't need the civilian money. The margins don't work for us, right? They would rather just sell it direct to agencies without the extra regulatory overhead that we have to face with the NFA. Constitutional or not, it is a lot faster for them just to sell 200,000 of these to the freaking Albanian military or to the Eutropians or to the Free Pinelanders and to the Ukrainians and whatnot. They can make their VIG, they can make their NUT super, super easy. So they're not really incentivized other than when the government tells them to do it, and then they come out with the RC3 to make anything newer. So no, you're not going to see these hot all 3D printed cans. You're not going to see this crazy triaxial, double freaking layered, you know, can like a Putnik or something like that. You're not going to see super cheap options because they can't sell it any cheaper than they sell it to the government. They're not going to give us a civilian 4-finger discount. Nor are they going to cut the price appreciably because, well, the government's already paying it. They already have these long-running, continuous, you know, ever-renewing contracts in place, and the unit price, they're not incentivized to lower it at all. And, you know, I would say that that's a bad thing, but it's not just on Surefire. It's on a lot of stuff in the government space as well. They're heavy, right? I get it. Yeah, they're full Inconel. Unless you get a titanium one, then it's full titanium. But for, you know, what you pay for it, you could find cheaper options that are lighter. You could find cheaper options with better first-round pop prevention and better sound suppression quality. I still stand by that for everything, right? Like the durability, how hot it's going to get, how much you could shoot it, the relative weight to sound suppression, the relative sound suppression to flash reduction, the mounting options, even though you're in the Surefire ecosystem. I still say that overall it's the best value, but if you only cared about one specific attribute more, then there are better options. And look, Surefire is the gold standard of which to compare other suppressors to. It's what even the suppressor manufacturers will admit to you, right? Maybe not Knight's Armament and stuff like that, but that's not glazing them by any means, right? I mean, they are great cans. They've been great cans for a long time, but there are even better cans out there, and that only benefits us as the consumer and even folks as the professional end user. So we should, you know, tip our hat to that as well. So not a huge con. You shouldn't buy this if you think you can make 556 or 308 quiet. There's a lot of folks on the internet who get real hot and bothered that, oh, the sound suppression quality sucks. Why even do that? And look, they're speaking out of ignorance, right? If you haven't had to shoot one of these in anger, if you haven't had to shoot a weapon in anger, God bless you. I'm glad you haven't. If you hadn't had to shoot these things in a confined space, even in like an indoor class with a bunch of people shooting unsuppressed, you'll understand that even, yeah, you can't make your freaking 11.5 shooting M193 or 8555 quiet, but you can make it a lot quieter than what it is, and paired with good quality ear protection, you make them completely hearing safe. I don't get any ringing, any tinnitus at the end of the day after shooting weapons suppressed, right? Now, the other thing about Surefire, they divest a lot, which again, they're trying to hit margins. I get it as a corporation, but as an end consumer, end user, I'm still gonna, you know, complain about it, right? All their riders, like their 22s and 9mm riders, they divested. I'm pretty sure they'll stop supporting the 260 and the 6.5. I don't see them moving that up to the RC3 production. They'll probably discontinue the 338 series. They're probably not going to do titanium flow through, right? So I wouldn't expect to see an RC3 Ti anytime soon. And they're probably not going to add other options. I don't see them reintroducing pistol cans and whatnot. There's other companies who do have pistol cans. I get it. You could get it from somewhere else. But, you know, I'm a creature of habit, man. I like to stick with like the same manufacturer for a lot of things, just for mounting options and for warranty reasons and just for brand loyalty overall. I think it does make sense to support your favorite brands. Surefire doesn't need my money by any means, but, you know, that's another con against them, that, like, you know, unless you're shooting 5.56 or 7.62 and choice other calibers, there's really not anything for it, even if they have a mount that supports like your thread pitch and thread pattern as well. And like I mentioned, they're slow to innovate. There's no swappable mounts, right? Like, these things are welded onto the body. You're not going to replace them. There was a guy who used to cut these off of Wardens that you would send in, and then he would weld them onto other cans, but I don't know if he got cease and desist, or if he just doesn't do it anymore because it's hard to scale, which I imagine it is. Other than this, you know, the Rotex mount, which honestly I kind of hate, right? Like, it's only held on there with, let me see if I can focus this. Yeah, this little sharp ass tab. And when this thing is under spring tension, right, when it's all the way torqued down, I got to get like another Allen key or another wrench into there, and you can see it's a little scratched up, which isn't a huge deal. But I really like the tabs that are on these. I get why they didn't do the ratcheting inner tab that makes it a little bit heavier, a little bit longer, you know, compared to the regular mount, right? You could just see how much taller it is. And yeah, they did have to make this outer threaded thing. So from an engineering perspective, I understand why they did it the way they did it, for cost, for compatibility, and obviously they needed this threaded section, but I don't know. I've used these for like a decade and a half now. Again, I'm a creature of habit, man. I'm a yapper, and my glazing Surefire, yeah, probably. Now, let's talk about the kind of one can to rule them all. And there are people who still want the one can to rule them all. It's like, hey, man, or just in general, like, hello, internets, help me pick a can that, you know, I could use on this 308 and this AK and this and this and that. And look, there is a historical precedent somewhat to that one can to rule them all, and why folks have gravitated toward these military, you know, style suppressors, especially Surefire, because, you know, think back in the day, like, you know, you had your OpSync and your Allen Engineering, then you had, you know, choice products from Psycho, choice products from AAC, Allen, and then, you know, there was a couple other manufacturers back in the day, but most of them died out or the guys left. You know, Knight's Armament, obviously. There wasn't a ton of like, hey, one can for everything that you could find a mount for, right? Because before the Surefire RC2 mounts, they had another style of extra long mounts. Then they had like the ratcheting 51 tooth AAC adapter from like the M4 2000s, right? Like, it was really hard to find a good can that would cover everything. But think again, the regulation, right? Like, I'm not the only one. You know, I used to have a TSSCI with Poly, and I got one can in the pre-period. Like, I've only owned one can before I've owned like the dozens of cans that I own now. And it took like 500 days for it to be approved. And that was back when you had the Obama rules where you had to go and get a sign off from your Clio, a sign off from the sheriff, and then they could say no for any reason if they wanted to, and you had to make an appointment. They would charge you money for it. Then you had to go get your fingerprint cards from a couple places that would do it, and they had to be good. The examination period was crazy, and even if you bought multiple cans, there was no guarantee that you would get them batched up, and God forbid you try to call in or anything. Like, you know, they just made it as hostile and as hard as possible for people to get cans. So that's where it really came from, the whole one can to rule them all. It's like, well, I just want to get one because these things are expensive, and, you know, think of the cost value as well. Back in the day, you could get a crate of freaking 7.62 by 39 or 5.45, 7 and 6. Yeah, it was corrosive, but you could get, like, I think the crates would come in like 5,600 and then like 10,400 or 10,480. I forget. I mean, I'm not talking about the spam cans. You used to be able to buy, I think, like 5 or 6 spam cans. Not think, I know, but I forget the exact amount. You could get that and a freaking Ames 74, you know, Romanian gun, or you could get a crate of freaking SKSs for like under $1,000, 1,500, right? Like, now you can't even do that. Like, good luck finding 5.45 ammo. It's like, well, would I rather spend my money on all that, or would I rather spend it on a can that's going to take me 2 years before I even get to see it, and by the time I see it, who knows if I even own the weapon? So that's where the whole kind of one can to rule them all, and why these military-derived cans ruled the market, because they were the only ones who were kind of demand resistant, right? There wasn't a ton of civilian demand because there weren't a ton of people willing to go through the process. Now there are, which is why we're seeing so many new manufacturers. I feel like ever since the events in 2022 and whatnot, where people were not going out as much for various reasons, right? that more folks got into suppressors. Awesome. Bring them into common use. More people need to use them. Protect your hearing. Get flow throughs, right? Protect your breathing. That sort of thing. Before that, you know, you had, you know, not that many manufacturers, but now you have a lot of manufacturers because there's a demand that could, you know, support the low margins in the regulatory environment that manufacturers have to put up with, you know, filing all those Form 2s and those Form 3s and, you know, making sure that things don't get stolen and having good relationships with their supply chain up and down the line, especially if they're in-housing all of it or outsourcing all of it, or maybe they're doing kind of half and half. Maybe they're like a design consultant or whatnot. So when it comes to that, you know, one can rule them all. It's the topic still comes up, and that's kind of like the precedent or the start of it. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of guys are like that. It's like, oh, what's the one rifle I could use for hunting and plinking and shooting and self-defense? You put a gun to my head, and you're like, okay, stupid. You got to pick one. If I only had 5.56 guns, it doesn't matter the length. I don't care if it's a 20-inch bull barrel that's threaded, or you have like a 10.3, or you have like a 7.5 that you bought from freaking PSA, and you put a Surefire device on it. I want a Surefire device, one can rule them all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. Surefire, SOCOM, 5.56, SB2, no holds bar. It's the best value for the money. It's slightly overboard, so you get less gassiness than the RC2. It helps you with those super shorties or those crazy twist rates and crazy bullet rates. It's not going to make it foolproof, but you're less likely to have a baffle impact than you will on the RC2. Now, these things aren't as super as available. The Surefire is starting to fulfill orders and Form 3s on these, so that's why I picked mine up a couple months ago. They're still out there if you look for them. I can't mention where to get them, and I'm getting enough subscribers where it probably matters to follow the rules, right? Even though they're always changing. But yeah, SB2 all day, every day. Now, if you only had one gun and you just didn't care about the money and you wanted the flow through and it had to be a Surefire, not an RC3, get an SRBS. Because, you know, even though I said the collar isn't the greatest, the flow through design on this is superior in the sound. I've heard them in person. I haven't shot mine yet, and this is a 7.62, so it's a little bit overboard. So it's not a great comparison, apples to oranges. But I would get the SRBS and the 5.56. You could get a freaking titanium compact. Like, you could get any combination of it. Like, you could get full size, compact, titanium, Inconel, doesn't matter. The most expensive one that B&T has with the hub adapter is $1,250 versus, even though these are coming down in price to like $1,400, $1,500, still get the SRBS, right? But let's say you have a 30 cal and you have a 6.5 gun and you got a 300 blackout and you got 5.56 guns. Get this, the Surefire 5.5 or the Surefire 7.62 RC2, or SOCOM 7.62 RC2, whatever. Get the regular 7.62, unless you have a low round counter. You're only shooting off of a bolt gun, but you have like a 5.56 bolt and a 6.5 bolt, then get this in the titanium version, right? Or you could also get the mini. They have a SOCOM 7.62 RC2 mini as well. Maybe you don't have like a bunch of SBRs. You have like pinned 14.5s or pinned 13.7s, right? So there's different options. And you see, like, I gave you a variety of them. I would even, you know, and if you care about sound suppression, I would just get the 300 SPS, especially if you have 300 blackout. So it depends, right? And that's why it's really hard to give answers to these questions. Like, oh, what one can should I get? And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, there's too many mounting options, and too many barrel lengths, and too many freaking calibers to really account for everything. So that's kind of my, like, high-level mad dash of, like, okay, if I only had to get one of each, when would I get one of each? Or just get all of them. And look, I get it. This is several $1,000s, you know, in front of me. I don't, you know, say that lightly, like, oh, yeah, you know, look at all this money, or just buy all of them, Haas. Like, I get it, man. It's hard out there. You know, I'm blessed with a really good career. I somewhat know what I'm doing, right? I don't want to, you know, just make recommendations kind of on the whim when I know some of you guys are, like, living on disability from DOD and Social Security and whatnot. Like, that's kind of jacked up. You know, so if you only had to afford one, I would still, the SRBS is the best value for the money. Now, I even talked about kind of what to pick when. Now, the Surefire does have like minimum barrel length or barrel length recommendations, right, for like the SB2 and when you would use a mini and not. I would say as long as, like, if you shoot any crazy ammo, right, I'm talking like varmint rounds, like 35s and freaking, if you're shooting this on like a PS90 or if you have a short barrel, if you have a barrel with a stupid fast twist rate for some reason, like you have like a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 12, because it's a clone, you're not shooting heavy bullets, or you just don't know what you're shooting, right? You're shooting kind of like crappy ammo with crappy bullets that have like shitty run out and bad concentricity, right? And just like they're all dicked up, and you want to give yourself a little insurance while also not having to breathe in as much carcinogens. SB2 all day, every day. I would only ever get the minis if you were like, I don't know, 14.5 pin and welded or a 16-inch and above, right? So like my Mark 12 Mod 3 Couturian project, right? That I would probably run a mini on, and that's what I'll probably do is get an RC3 mini if they come out, or I'll just send it on an RC, on a B&T SRBS compact in Inconel, right? Everything else, get the RC2. The RC3, you know, it's really hard to recommend at the price, even at the discounted prices they're going for, man. When there's an SRBS, and you could get a Hux Flow or a freaking Putnik with the hub adapter, overpay for it, and still come in cheaper than this at its cheapest. And they're going to sound better and be a little bit better, right? So the only thing, it's like if you want the Surefire brand loyalty, which, hey, that's on you, or if you want to have the user serviceability, but the Putnik is serviceable, right? Like the serialized part on the Putnik is the very bottom of it. You're probably not going to blow the very bottom of it up, right? Like that's a thick ass part of a piece of steel. That's a serialized part. So you could blow the entire can up and still probably Resilient will be able to repair it for you, or just buy you another one because they might be so impressed with your otherworldly regarded skills for blowing up a freaking Putnik. And I shouldn't laugh about that. But now on like the 308s and everything and above, if you have like a 6.5, which it's hard, and if you have a 5/8 or a 3/4 6.5, you can use the 7.62 on it, but they have a 6.5 gun. They used to call it the SOCOM 260. That's when 260 Remington, I believe, was kind of like the new hotness, or the 260 Ruger, I forget. There was a point in time when there was like the special cartridge program in 1st Special Forces Command that eventually bore out the 6.5 Creedmoor, the Mark 20 SSR and 6.5, as well as the M110A3 and the M110K7, right? So it only closed recently, or, well, recently in the grand scheme of things. I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 years ago. But for a while there, like the 204, the 243, and the 260 were kind of like hot topic items, right? 6.5 had been around since 2008. People were using it as a hunting cartridge, but that's why they called it the 260. It's the same measurement, really, but then the branding kind of sucks, so then they relaunched them as a 6.5. But for collector's purposes, if you just want to collect them all, Surefires are kind of like Glocks, right? You could get the 260 gun. And then if it's like 300 blackout, I would definitely get the 300 SPS. It has a little bit better back pressure, better sound suppression to help cycle crap like these. This is a Lancer 300 mag, but these are the Hornady Black 208s, which are, they sound great, really good shooting, pretty accurate for what they are, the 208 AMAX. But damn, even with the filler in them, they hardly cycle. And I have a down venting tack, and I lube the crap out of my guns. And even with the RC2 7.62 and a 10.5 300 blackout with pistol gas, I'm still getting short strokes. So I'm going to try the 300 SPS, and if not, I'm just going to switch ammo. Now on the RC3, to echo Fort Knox podcast, it's not for us. The RC3 is not for us. They made it for military. They made it for law enforcement. They designed it to be backwards compatible, backwards capable, not full backwards compatible with current mounting options. The design criteria were like, hey, we need an 80% reduction in crap blown back into the user, which also gives us lesser parts wear. And it's a cumulative effect because, again, dudes are doing a lot of shooting indoor ranges, a lot of indoor courses, especially like if you're in a major PD or like you're out on the East Coast, right? Like, you know, if you're an East Coast SEAL or you're in 5th or 3rd or 7th, like you're going to be shooting indoors. I shot a lot indoors, right? And you're shooting with a lot of guys and everybody has a can. I don't care what the ventilation, freaking HEPA filters they got going on inside of the indoor range. You're going to be breathing in a lot of crap, right? Like, it's not for us. At its price, at $1,700, this is not worth it. At the discounted $1,400, $1,500, not worth it. If you could get them discounted for like $1,450 and you get like the free tax stamp, like the rebate that makes it $1,200, yes, I would definitely get this even over the RC2. And like, if it all were equal, I would still pick the RC3. Just because I like the flow-through design. For the rigidity and the ruggedness, I mean, this boy's almost got 4,000 rounds on him. Like, You know, I've been beating it up, and don't worry, this discoloration's from me picking this thing up with a freaking oven mitt that has God knows how many, you know, pie filling and freaking steak and brisket juice on it, you know, so I burnt all that Maillard reaction onto the freaking can. This isn't like some crazy discoloration or delam or something going on with it. There are better options than the RC3, I'm sorry, but I had to get it because I had to see. It's Reddit's most hated suppressor. I could kind of get why, and yes, I used Redditor as a pejorative, and yes, I realize it's a generalization, and I'm kind of sorry for that. A lot of people bitch about this that just don't need to be bitching about it. Like, yeah, does it more flash and make it fireball? Yeah, you can. Is it funny to make the memes? Oh yeah, the memes are funny. I mean, it's a big corporation. Who cares? But does the seal target or the freaking possum or microwave care? No. If you're wearing really good hearing protection, you double up on ear pro like you should, and you're, you know, shooting outdoors, does it matter? No, not really to me. I just like the fact that it doesn't put parts acceleration, and I use this on a PS90 SBR too, which helps, you know, get the gas down. So I like it, honestly. There's reason why it's kind of hated. So I also get that, right? So don't by any means rush out and buy an RC3 if you don't need one. Now, again, I'm going to loop in some footage of the RC2 and RC3 on a 14.5 URGI. It was 90 degrees, super humid, low pressure. I was shooting 55 grain PMC bronze. Usual caveat, microphones on this device, a Pickle 8, 9 Pro, whatever. And most microphones are condensers. That means they condense and normalize the sound into an even level. So really loud stuff, really quiet stuff, really weird pitch stuff, as well as the pressure component of sound is not captured really well.
What do you see now?
It's hot.
No.
Oh, the sight. Oh, what?
It's not zero to the rifle yet.
Now, to close out mounting options, right? So anytime you go to mount ones, you should use one with a labyrinth seal. What's a labyrinth seal? You see these bands, right? So a labyrinth seal is a type of mechanical seal, right? They're on like on wheel bearings and axle bearings as well. So that kind of interrupted weird ridges, that's what's in mechanical engineering, I believe it's called a tortuous path, right? So when you have non-contact seals, right, I'm not talking like a lid or a gasket, it's a non-contact seal, you know, kind of like between the collar that rotates and the brake itself. It helps to keep low pressure and high pressure areas off of each other. It helps prevent leakage because it's forcing it, you know, up and over these ridges. So the pressure normalizes ostensibly before it escapes. So that helps to not link freaking, you know, liquids all out of your freaking axle bearings, and it also helps not to leak a bunch of extra gas into your system or out the front of the suppressor when you don't use a labyrinth seal. You should always use a labyrinth seal. I get it, it's not on every weapon. So, you know, here's more to the point. Here's the same one on a 300 blackout gun, and you could see, you know, there's some accumulation of crud on it, right? So this is a 4-prong, right, a 5/8 device. My SR25 APR or E2 PR, whatever you want to call it. So this is the muzzle brake, and it has good labyrinth seals and even has these little pressure valves. And as far as devices, if you had to pick one, I would go muzzle brake. And I get shooting them unsuppressed sucks for people next to you and maybe a little bit for you, especially indoors. But it does act as kind of a sacrificial baffle for erosion prevention. Like you'll erode out the brake before you erode out the can. And then you have ones that do not have labyrinth seals. This is a closed tine that I have on my PS90 SBR. You can see there's no labyrinth seals, right? You just have this little contact ridge over there. This is the same for the war comp, and the war comp's even worse because it has all those little compensating holes that shoot even more gas into where that would be a seal. What I use these for, so this will live on the PS90. This lives on my URGI. This lives on my FBI HRT, even though I should probably swap these, so this could live on the PS90 SBR. This will live on the 300 blackout gun. This is going to live on my Howa 1500, my hunting rifle, and this is going to live on my SR25 E2 PR. And then I'll either get an SRBS compact or an RC2 or an RC3 mini for the Mark 12 Mod 3. So apologies if I glance over details. If you would like me to include like basic attributes, size, weights, compatibility, comparability, the testing platforms, and any other data provided by Surefire, like decibel reduction levels and whatnot, please let me know. I am planning a deeper dive shoot on all these cans. I'll shoot them on the PS90. I'll shoot all of them on the 11.5 HRT, all of them on the 14.5 URGI, and all of them on the 18-inch Mark 12 Mod 3 Criterion project. I'll be using M1983 and bronze, PMC bronze 55 grain, and probably some hand loads, and then American Eagle 5.7 for the PS90 for a full range comparison on the same recording device, which should, serve as decently good. I won't be doing any like flash or any nighttime shooting or anything like that, maybe in a follow-on video. Until then, if you found this somewhat informative or entertaining, consider liking, commenting, sharing the video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. It seems to grow with the Mark 12 Mod 3 second entry and the Draco. Kind of got me, boosted up in the algorithm a little bit there. I went from like 15 to 50 subs. So thanks for that, folks. As always, man, it's a crazy world out there. We have more wars kicking off, war in Lebanon. Ukraine war is looking crazier every day. You got whole teams of dudes, like even guys that I knew that I don't agree with their option to become a mercenary, but like, hey, I get it. They're encircled in places I would never thought to hear of, Ugledar and Selidovo and Kurakove and, Krutiar and shit like that. Like, with all that in mind, check in on your loved ones, man, your friends, battle buddies, dudes you're in the military with, coworkers, anybody important in your life. And look, if you're feeling stressed and beat down, you're feeling depressed, man, reach out to people who want to talk to you. And like I said before, reach out to me, man. You're not weak. You're not a little bitch for being sad or not feeling, up to the task, right? I think you're less of a man if you box it all up and hurt yourself, your family, your tribe, whatever that may be, a family unit, a community. Look, man, don't let a few bad days let you run out of tomorrows. Don't give in, man. Like, shit's tough. Shit's real tough for a lot of people. I always try to end with this. I know it's more of a somber note than anything reassuring because, look, I'm not going to patronize you, man. I could hardly reassure myself some days, right? Like, it's nuts out there. But, it's just really a reminder to take care of yourself. Take care of those who love you. Reach out if you need to talk to somebody. I'm serious. But anyway, stay safe out there, right? Goodbye. Mount Let the Hellfire.